So, as we are considering these components or the guidelines of the good manufacturing practices, so we yesterday talked about, or in the last classes, we have talked about the premises, the personnel, and the equipment. Today, we'll go on to talk about the materials, the packaging material, then the sanitation and hygiene, and the qualification and the validation related guidelines. So with regards to the materials, that is the starting material, the raw materials which go into the production, to the manufacturing. So regarding those materials, the purchasing department of the company sends the order to the approved supplier. Okay, so basically the purchase department in the company, he would actually be collecting or receiving the raw material specifications, which raw materials are required and their specifications, okay, from the production department, from the QA/QC department as well. Okay, so and then the purchase department would place an order to an approved supplier. That means the supplier is already fixed. It is in a way approved by the company. And why this supplier has to be approved, or why it is to be fixed or from a particular supplier that you are buying, it is, as we said, because the raw material itself, okay, that is the vendor, the supplier. Even if you change the vendor or the supplier of the raw materials, the quality, the product, the quality of the end product would also vary. So that is why even the supplier is kept constant. If it has to be changed, then validation studies will have to be conducted again to see that simply by changing the supplier and thereby possibly changing even possibly the specifications as well might slightly change. The quality basically might slightly change, and therefore the quality of the end product would vary. So that is why the order is to be placed to an approved supplier, approved jointly by the QA/QC and the production departments to supply the material. And then when the order is placed and when the goods are received, the raw materials are received, okay, so they are to be inspected, whether the cartons are packed, everything is there, seals are intact and things like that. And then immediately a quarantine label is to be put up. Quarantine label is applied to each container with the entries, the code number, the name of the material, the lot number, and the date on which it is received. Next, it is useful to have a quarantine label and the released and rejected labels printed on different colors. Now, basically, the idea is that once it is quarantine, that means the goods have just, the raw materials have just been received. They are to be tested. That means samples of those raw materials, of the API, of the excipients, even of the packaging material, whatever starting material that you have. Okay, so basically we are talking about the API and the excipients. Okay, so the samples will have to be collected of the drug, of the excipients, and they will be sent to the quality control department. And the specifications would be checked. If it is found that it is up to the mark, it is a quality product, and it passes all the tests as per the IP, then it is going to be taken in for the production and the manufacturing. So that is where you put these labels, that is release. So initially it is quarantine. That means it is under test. It has not been tested yet. Okay, or possibly it is under test, but it is not to be used in manufacturing. This is why you have the label quarantine. But once it is approved by the quality control department, once the tests are completed and the raw material passes all the quality control tests, then you put up the label on those containers as a release. Release, that means releasing it for the manufacturing in the premises. So that is released. And of course, it can also be rejected if the quality control tests do not pass, or if it is not as per the specifications, then you put the label rejected. Okay, and this is the idea that you have these three types: quarantine, that means under test or not tested yet; those which have been tested and passed, that is released; and you have the rejected, those which have failed the quality control test, or they are not up to the mark or not as per the desired specifications. So these three labels should preferably be of different colors. So that is again a practice of the good manufacturing practice. Okay, that is you by using colors to designate these three different types: quarantine, release, rejected. So possibly, for instance, release could be green, rejected could be red, quarantine could be yellow, black, things like that. So now coming to the packaging material. Okay, so that is packaging material basically means the containers and the cartons, the secondary, primary and the secondary packaging materials. So all the regulatory requirements are in agreement that components as starting materials, and just like the API and the excipients, where we said they will be received and quarantined, they will undergo the test, rejected, or the release time. So all those things have to be performed with the packaging materials as well. So and the containers etc should be stored in permit batch segregation and stock rotation. That is first in, first out, or first expiry and first out principle. That means when you store, whether the API, whether the excipients, even whether the packaging materials, this is the term which is most commonly used. That is FIFO, first in, first out. That means if the material that you had bought earlier, okay, of course it is going to expire also earlier from the second order that you have placed, possibly. So the one that is going to expire, that is near its expiry. Okay, so you of course put that means the older batch, whether raw materials, excipients, packaging material, the older ones that are going to be used in the manufacturing and they are going to be consumed earlier. So that is first in, that means purchased first, and first out, those are the ones which are going to be used, first in, first out. So that is an important, again, a principle. FIFO, again, it is common sense. The one that you have purchased earlier should be used earlier. The newer purchase, the second older purchase that you have, should be used later onwards. So it also permits wet cleaning of the floors. Now this is again a guideline. That means where you are storing the packaging materials, that space is also going to be cleaned. The floors are also going to be cleaned, and they are going to be cleaned by mopping, by the use of disinfectants. So that is wet cleaning of the floor should be permitted. That means the cartons should not be damaged. They should not get wet. Okay, so without the risk of wetting the materials. Then you have a guideline for the sanitation and the hygiene. Okay, that is to do with the cleanliness, the personal hygiene as well. That is of the workers. Then the scope of sanitation hygiene covers the personnel, the premises, the equipment, the apparatus, production materials, containers, products for cleaning and disinfection, anything that can become a source of contamination to the product, whether the dust particles, whether the microorganisms, or whether the API excipients which blow up, okay, the small size particles which blow up in the air. So that also, everything has to be kept clean. Okay, should not contaminate the other products. So that has to do with sanitation hygiene. Now the area, surfaces, equipment must be kept clean. That is the point. Where gross amounts of dirt are present, it may be necessary to first remove most of it by scrubbing. Okay, so this is even to this extent the guidelines prescribe that first you should scrub away the dirt. Okay, then the surfaces may be cleaned by application of a cleaning agent, followed by rinsing and possibly disinfection and sterilization. So stepwise, this is everything that we do even in our household. So this is quite common sense. First you scrub away all that dirt which accumulated, and then you apply for go for the disinfecting or the cleaning agent. Okay, so qualification and validation. Now these are the also guidelines for the, as we already know what is qualification, and we already know what is equipment validation. So qualification is an action of providing that any premises, systems, items of equipment work correctly and actually lead to the expected results. All right. Now, validation is defined as the establishing of documented evidence which provides a high degree of assurance that a planned process will consistently perform according to the intended specified outcome. So we already know what qualification and validation is. But when any new manufacturing formula or a method of preparation is adopted, steps should be taken to demonstrate its suitability for, again, common sense. All these are guidelines. We'll still continue with a few more guidelines in the next class. Thank you.